In this mini-series, we're going to introduce you to all 30 athletes competing at the World's Strongest Man this year. We're going to be taking a look at their story so far, how we think they'll do in the events, and how we rate their overall chances. And in this episode, we're taking a look at the Texas Titan, Gabriel Pena, from Mexico.
So the first really notable competition that we saw Gabriel Pena compete in was the Amateur Arnold's in 2016, which is a qualifier, obviously, for the Arnold Strongman Classic. That year he took 5th, but then he came back in 2020, improving on that result and placing 3rd overall. That year, that was good enough to earn him an invitation to the 2020 World's Strongest Man. However, unfortunately, he wasn't able to see through the group stages when he had to pull out on medical advice. Last year, Gabe was invited to do the Giants Live World Open in Manchester, and the first event of that competition is the Deadlift World Championships. Well, Gabe pulled an incredible 1,000-pound deadlift, and then he went on to place 5th in the World Open. Gabe and his partner Bianca had their first baby back in February this year, and Gabe has a podcast called Titan Talk. So Gabe is returning to the World's Strongest Man after a year off, which we know he is extremely happy about. Yeah. He doesn't have that much track record to go off, even though it feels like he's been around for a while, but he's still a relatively new athlete.
He is. Only one World's Strongest Man outing, and unfortunately not a great one for him. No. Had to pull out, didn't get to do too many events. 2021, though, was a good year. He got to compete regularly in the Giants Live. I think he did 2 Giants Live shows. He competed at the Shore Classic. Much more experience coming into this year's World's Strongest Man.
So let's look at the events the athletes are doing in the group stages, starting off with the loading race.
So one thing I always do when we look into athletes and how they're going to perform in competition is look through their history. So I've delved into the Strongman archives to look at his track record on these events. Unfortunately, the only time he's had loading was at World's Strongest Man in 2020, and he withdrew from the competition. So we have very little to go on. So then we have to look at his training form and also how I rate him in terms of moving events as it is. Now, one thing that he's got this year is more experience coming into the competition, so I think he's going to be a little bit more relaxed. Definitely helps at World's Strongest Man. That first time you do an event at Worlds is very, very nerve-wracking. There's the cameras, the lights, the interviews that you've got to go through, so many things that you're just not used to when you're doing your normal one-day show. So he's got some experience now. I think that's going to, bode well for him. I don't know that he's like a winner in this type of event. I think we're going to be seeing Gabe hoping to get some decent points to start him off. Mid-table somewhere, I think he'll be very pleased with that.
Next event then, he's going to be doing the deadlift ladder, and we know Gabe is an incredible deadlifter.
And this is an event that if Gabe wants to come and qualify for the final, he needs to win this event. Yeah. He's a monster deadlifter, pulled over 1,000 pounds, pulled massive weights on the axle deadlift as part of the Static Monsters competition. He is a huge deadlifter, and he will be coming to put his foot down and win the deadlift.
Next then, the car walk. Has Gabe ever done a car walk before?
I've not seen him do a car walk, but he's done the yoke a number of times. I wouldn't say it's his best event. He's got an okay track record on this. Kind of mid-table is kind of the best performances we've seen from him. So he needs to perform. Has his training gone really well? Hopefully it has. I know he's been training with Brian Shaw. Maybe that's kind of rubbed off to him. Really, it's bound to. Just being around Brian, you're going to pick up tips and learn stuff. And like I said, he's an athlete that's improving. So these younger athletes, they can tend to make bigger jumps and improvements. Yeah. So hopefully this will be a good one for him. I'm expecting again somewhere around mid-table.
Next then is a grip test, the wrecking ball hold.
Yeah, and again, looking into his track record, grip and farmers type events don't necessarily look like they're his favourite events. Okay. He's going to need a big performance here. I think if he can win that deadlift and get into position here where he's fighting for a potential qualifying spot, we're going to see him work hard. This is the stage of where an athlete will either keep giving it absolutely everything, or they see their dreams slipping away and they start to kind of back off. I hope Gabe is in that position where he's fighting hard, he's worked hard on his grip, and he puts in a big performance.
Next then is the log lift for reps. Now we know it's going to be about 150 kilos, which is the weight they used at the Giants Live World Tour Finals. Gabe got 3 reps.
He did. He got 3 reps, and looking through his competition history, pressing isn't his strongest event.
No.
You know, in that competition, he beat Felix and he beat Andy Black, who are 2 potential athletes that could be in this. But how many Felixes and Andy Blacks are you going to have in your group? Normally, you want to be 5, 6, 7, 8 reps on a 150 log. So, from the track record, pressing not necessarily his strength. How's training gone? I'm not too sure yet, but I think he's going to need a bit of luck when it comes to the pressing.
So if Gabe finds himself in the stone off, obviously it depends heavily on who you're up against in that stone off. But how do you think Gabe might fare?
Like you said, it does depend who you're up against and how much you want it. A stone off is very different to Atlas stones, and really we can only base it off Atlas stones. That's what we can kind of see in the history books. His Atlas stones are not bad. I would say average for an elite level strongman. He's not going to challenge the top names,
no.
But he's someone that's capable of doing a solid set of stones. I think speed lets him down a little bit in the highest level competitions.
Which is less of a factor in the stone
Exactly,
off,
that's what I was going to mention. In a stone off, it's not so much about speed. You just need to make sure you keep repping that thing over as many times as possible. So if it was a complete, a street race, I wouldn't be so confident. I think he's motivated, he's looking forward to coming back to the world's strongest man. And if he gets into that stone off, you know Gabe's going to battle.
So his second time coming to World's Strongest Man, a really stacked year. I so wish we knew the groups, because this would be so much easier to do if we had the groups, but we're going in completely blind. How do you rate his chance of getting out of the groups? Which is, I know, hard to say.
Yeah, well, without knowing who's in his group, it's always difficult. But for me, Gabe has still got to use this year as a learning curve. I think he has potential for maybe getting into the stone off. I think he's going to be somewhere around that mid-pack of his group. That's what I'm hoping to see. Improvements from last time. I hope he finishes the competition, gets more experience, and keeps progressing. I think another year we're going to start seeing someone like Gabe challenge. At the moment, he still has some weaknesses at this level, and I think that could be a factor in terms of getting through to the final. But I'm sure he's going to put in a big performance. If he can go and smash that deadlift and really get some solid performances on the other events, could definitely put himself into the stone off. And when you're in that stone off, you've got a chance. And
you said it yourself earlier, someone like Gabe, who's still relatively new to this sort of elite level, we can see like massive improvements from someone like him quite quickly, can't we?
Absolutely, and he has made good progress. I just think at the moment there's still too many well-seasoned guys that just have that experience a little bit more in certain events. But he's got that weapon, the deadlift, that makes you dangerous. I wish him the absolute best. He's a lovely guy, lovely family, and we always look forward to seeing Gabe compete.